That was a huge result for Arsenal away from home after the disappointment of the Bayern Munich result and obviously the disappointment of the Aston Villa game in the Premier League last week as well. And this Arsenal side looked strong. They looked far more compact defensively and were able to find a couple of little moments of brilliance to obviously get a 2-0 win at Molineux. And for a lot of people, in myself included, I thought Wolves was actually going to be harder than Chelsea in terms of the away aspect, in terms of how good Wolves have been at Molineux this season. And Arsenal just, look, I'll be honest, I think this Arsenal side looked like they were running on fumes. They looked very fatigued. There were lots of spaces in midfield for Traore, for Tommy Doyle, for Bueno to kind of break through. And Wolves had those opportunities, not many. And Arsenal managed the game very well. Take away Bayern Munich, look, obviously a loss. If you take away that and you just focus on away form for Arsenal, except for that result in the last few months, has been absolutely incredible. And also clean sheets, not just straight wins or anything like that. The amount of goals that Arsenal can see in away from home is absolutely ridiculous. And that back four today with Kirill, who, you know, at times struggled a little bit in this game and got skinned a couple of times. I'm a massive fan of Kirill. I think he brings stability to his back line. I would have played him against Bayern Munich instead of Tomiyasu. Yeah, Tomiyasu had a good game against Bayern Munich for many people, of course. But the back line today looked very, very strong for Arsenal. We'll talk about all the goals and where this leaves Arsenal in the Premier League title race. Let's be completely real. You put pressure on Man City. You've got an FA Cup final to think about and other tricky games in the league. We'll talk about them at the end of the video as well, where Man City and Arsenal go in this title race. I think Liverpool are out of it, in my opinion. Arsenal can put pressure on. They can put so much pressure on because when you're chasing points, it's different. But when you get them, you can put almost an extra bit of burden on the opposition side. That's what Arsenal have the ability to do now for the next couple of weeks. They have a couple of earlier fixtures than Man City. And especially with that Chelsea game where, again, if Arsenal just get their heads straight and focus down, they should be able to beat Chelsea. I know people talk about Chelsea's brilliance against Big Six sides this season, you know, relative to how poor they've been in the rest of the league campaign. That's granted. But if Arsenal just knuckle down, they should be able to breeze past Chelsea, in my honest opinion. And it's a massive game. And Chelsea will be shattered as well. They've just had their dreams crushed in the FA Cup semi-final. I did a little reaction to that. If you're interested, make sure you watch and obviously subscribe. Would really appreciate it. Let's talk about the goals. I'm such a massive fan of Trossard, but I don't quite understand him. He's like one of those kind of... I've dated girls like it a little bit, where you think it's going smoothly. And then all of a sudden, maybe they don't text for a week and you wonder, you just don't know where you are. And you don't know where you are with Trossard. You really don't know where you are because I think he put in a couple of flat performances against Bayern Munich. Obviously didn't start in Munich, but a couple of flat performances. I know he scored that goal at the Emirates, but a little bit toothless at points. You do wonder if he's a Champions League level winger like a Gnabry is, for example. I don't think he is. But out of nowhere, you can come up with finishes where Arsenal is half-time, was approaching half-time, and you get that little toe poke out of nowhere. He's got it in the locker. I think he's an impact sub, first and foremost. But especially with Martinelli's form, I think Martinelli's been run into the ground with fitness this season. I really do. I don't even think he's a left wing. I think he wants to be a striker somewhere, in my opinion. Trossard can do that role incredibly well. And that finish was so cute. It was the kind of finish that you kind of wanted to see Martinelli pull off in Munich when Arsenal needed it. And it was never quite there, maybe because of the brilliance of Bayern Munich's defending. But it completely opened up Wolves out of nowhere. It was a beautiful finish off the post out of nowhere. Little toe poke. Dare I say Ronaldinho-esque in terms of how it was executed. But it's such a big goal. It's such a big goal because you can honestly creep at the Molineux in its second half, and it's 0-0, and you can get hit on the counter attack when you're trying to chase this kind of huge win that Arsenal need in the title race. And it's a beautiful little finish. I'm also a massive fan of Odegaard's strike. He kind of takes it around the keeper, and then he kind of bends it from a very acute angle. Obviously, it's more of a consolation goal, and it's the 95th minute when it went in. But it's nice to see him scoring again, who I think was a little bit abject in the Bayern Munich games. I think this is his level at the moment in terms of dominating and running the show against the likes of Wolves in the Premier League title race. He needs world-class players around him. David Silva had Nasri, David Silva had De Bruyne, David Silva had Fernandinho, and you had Toure. And you do look at Odegaard and think, who's he actually bouncing off, who's got the same level as him? Even Bernardo Silva for David Silva. Who's Odegaard able to bounce off of? Saka is a technical player, of course, works hard, but he's not world class yet. And I think Odegaard in these kind of games flourishes, and you want to see more in the Champions League. And that's why I think, look, I've done a video talking about where Arsenal sort of go from here anyway, but that's where you think Arsenal probably need a little bit more investment. So if Odegaard can do it on this level, he needs a bit more around him to create a platform where he can influence Champions League knockout games against the likes of Bayern Munich. But I've talked enough of Bayern Munich. I want to talk about Arsenal's fixtures going into the remainder of the season, because it's very, very interesting. The Chelsea one stands out for me massively. I think Arsenal will do a job on Chelsea. Man City have got Brighton coming up, where that's a tricky game, especially with fatigue. Especially you see Guardiola coming out and kind of criticising the amount of time between the Real Madrid game and the FA Cup game, saying why Coventry Man United couldn't have been today upon recording this, and City Chelsea couldn't have been on Sunday. And that is a fair argument. I guess obviously broadcasting rights and stuff like that gets in the way. But City are shattered, honestly, and City look flat. And I think Arsenal are, but in a slightly different way. I think this Arsenal side can rotate. They have freshness there, in my opinion, that City might not, especially for the disappointment of the penalties as well, the extra minutes getting to penalties. This Arsenal side have got a small window of an opportunity to narrow down, get back to what they're good at. I think they lost a little bit themselves against Bayern Munich. I think they lost a little bit of the ruggedness. They conceded cheap, silly goals, in my opinion. The defence faltered. And look, as soon as they go back to playing the likes of Wolves, they go back to that level. And there's nothing to bemoan about that, because that is a level to win the Premier League. City did it year after year with Guardiola. It took so long to win the Champions League. And eventually something changes. Someone like a Rodri comes in and it influences things massively. And Arsenal are still missing that. But against the likes of Wolves and for the rest of the sides that Arsenal have got, including that Spurs game, where I think there will be joy there for Arsenal against Spurs. I think there's a narrow window of an opportunity for Arsenal to gain momentum, try and win every game. There's no FA Cup for them. There's no Champions League now, of course. Gain momentum, pure wins, clean sheets, make it ugly as anything. And this honestly reminds me of the Aguero season for Man City. Now, I know this is a ridiculous shout for some people if you don't quite get it. But City and Man United were neck and neck for so long in that Premier League campaign. And City actually dropped points at Peter Crouch volley, dropped points to Sunderland, dropped points to Swansea, Luke Moore out of nowhere. And actually City's dominant position in the title race was evaporated. And then City came back with the Aguero goal. And that's why the final day of the season against QPR was so big. And Arsenal got that opportunity to make Man City what Man United were in that title race, put pressure on them. That 4-4 draw against Everton, Steven Pienaar, Fellaini getting huge goals. Jelavic, I think it was. I'm not saying it's lightly, and I'm not saying it's easy, but stranger things have happened in the Premier League where Arsenal could definitely put pressure on City, get their games done early, put out surprising big performances against Chelsea, against Spurs. And then when City have got the likes of Spurs themselves, which obviously City, such a poor record at the new White Hart Lane, Fulham away as well, some tricky games in there, you can put pressure on, and the title race is still there for Arsenal. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, but it's a massive win nonetheless for Arsenal upon their return after losing in the Champions League.